It is Thursday night and it's old time story time. I'm going to tell a story that's going to illustrate the differences between somebody who's 60 years old who grew up in the 70s versus somebody who grows up today. And the story, I think itself, will explain the differences. So, when I was in the seventh grade, I was working or I had a part time job. And one of my part time jobs was selling newspaper subscriptions for the Winnipeg Tribune. And it was an after school job. I was in the seventh grade, so I don't know how old that would have been, maybe 13 years old. And I went to Holy Cross School. And what would happen is the Winnipeg Tribune guys would pull up in a white van, think of a Candyman van, and the doors would open up at the back, and out would billow smoke. Think of like Otto from The Simpsons. Those were the two guys who were driving this van. They'd open the back doors, billow out like smoke. And when you looked inside the van, there wasn't seats to sit in or anything like that. It was just like a cargo van. And there would be other kids in there. It looked like human trafficking, basically. And what they did was after school, they would pick all these kids up that were all these different schools and put them into the van. And then there would be a part in Winnipeg that they would take us to that was the area that we were to go and get newspaper subscriptions. So they would take us many times. It would be the worst part of the city. And I remember going into, I think it was a Balmoral area at the time, very, very low end area. And you're going into apartment buildings that are like 100 years old, and you get in and they just, they smell on their own. But then, of course, you got people cooking and all that sort of stuff. And it's really, really bad. So I remember, I was like the top salesman in the seventh grade selling all these subscriptions. And then what they would do is by the time you were done, it would be, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And then they would drive you home. So that was a big advantage to me because, or one of them was, aside from making a little bit extra money, was the fact that they'd pick me up at school, which to get to Holy Cross School, I'd have to take it was 2 bus transfers through downtown. It was like an hour on transit bus to get there. So anyway, I would do this and they'd get me home. So at some point, I think I decided, I just can't do this anymore. I'm getting home too late, or I think that's it, or maybe my mom or my dad said something. I don't know. But anyway, I quit. And I remember the two guys, man, they were so devastated because I was like their number one salesperson. And they would come by, they'd come by the school in their van, which was creepy unto itself. And they would try to get me to change my mind. Hey, Brian, you know what? Are you sure? And I guess because they would get commissions or overrides if they were doing well in the territories. And I was thinking about it today and I was like, that's an interesting story. Nowadays, could you imagine kids nowadays going through the same sort of thing where would you let your kids, get picked up by a van with a couple of guys that are, smoking reefers, picking up all these kids that are sitting in the back of the van, and then, not seeing your kid till 9 o'clock at night. And I just look at it and I go, that was my era. That was, late 70s. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. Over and out, retraining pain.